The process of breathing is not something to which the average person may pay much attention, but for the singer, this process is often considered the foundation of good singing technique. To discuss this process, I'm going to go from the inside out, which begins with alignment. Ideal alignment, or anatomical neutral, features the head, the shoulders, the pelvis, and the ankles in a straight line. You have the natural curvature of the spine and an easy balance of the muscles in the trunk, the shoulders, and the neck. The spine is made of 24 vertebrae divided into the cervical section with vertebrae 1 through 7, which are the most flexible section of the spine. So this is how you move your head around. The thoracic section with the next 12 vertebrae, which connects to the 12 pair of ribs, which is how you can remember that. The lumbar section with the next 5 vertebrae, which are large flexible discs, and the sacrum, which is fused in where the spine attaches to the pelvis. The thoracic spine connects to the rib cage, which houses the main organs of the breathing process, including our lungs. The lungs attach to the rib cage via the pleural sacs, and they stick to each other. So when the rib cage gets bigger, so do the lungs, and vice versa. The deepest portion of the lungs are called pulmonary alveoli, which is where the oxygen to carbon dioxide transfer happens. After inhalation, our air travels to the pharynx, which has 3 parts: laryngeal, oral, and nasal. Then it goes to the larynx, which houses our vocal folds, very important, to the trachea, which is made of cartilage rings, and then the bronchial tree, and finally to the lungs. And our lungs are like rubber bands. They're not going to expand on their own, which is where the diaphragm comes into play. Our diaphragm kind of helps bring air into the body, and it looks like a jellyfish. It has these 2 pillars that connect down. The bottom of the lungs attach to the diaphragm and increases volume, which decreases pressure in the lungs. Another muscle involved is the external intercostals. It pulls the bottom of the ribs up, and it attaches between the ribs from the top of the upper rib through the space to the bottom rib. In exhalation, we have the internal intercostals, and we don't use these a lot in singing, but we do use our abdominal muscles, such as our transversus abdominis, which squeezes in and pushes air out. It's kind of like a corset muscle. When the diaphragm contracts, it pushes down and out on the viscera, which include the internal oblique abdominis and the external oblique abdominis. In inhalation, you kind of want to take in the amount of air that you need for the next phrase. So not as much air that your entire body can hold, but the amount of air that your next musical phrase requires. You then go to suspension, which is where you find your breath control. This is the brief moment before you start singing, before the exhalation. And then the elastic nature of the lungs take over. Your muscles continue to contract, and this was our external intercostals, and the air moves out of your body. And in exhalation, that is where singers, obviously, this is where they sing, and you want to slow the collapse of the ribs as long as possible. There are different ways to breathe, but the type of breathing that is most advantageous for singers is the combined breath, where your external intercostals pull up and out, and the diaphragm goes down, and the singer gets a very expansive breath. So this combines thoracic and abdominal breathing. Some exercises, images, or metaphors to guide someone to proper breathing technique should always begin with proper alignment. But when you're going through these exercises, you don't want to tell your students, this is how you're going to feel, or this is how this process should be, because they might not feel it. And then they would get discouraged because they don't understand what you're saying. So let them explain what they feel and try to figure out what they're talking about. But some exercises to proper breathing could be putting their hands on their back, making their middle fingers touch, and then breathe so that their middle fingers no longer touch to get back expansion. Have them do a football stance with their hands on their knees and then breathe, because then gravity will be working with their abdominal muscles to push them out. For exhalation, we could do hissing, so you could breathe in, hold or suspend, and then control your exhalation on a zzz. And this could also be pinwheels, so working to get a consistent stream of breath and moving that pinwheel consistently.